The Quantum Group USA, LLC in California, DBA Quantum Distribution and Insurance Services. Advisors are responsible for following all insurance, DOL, FINRA, SEC, broker-dealer, and compliance officer approval requirements prior to distributing this information to clients. Welcome back. This is the Quantum Industry Insights Podcast, and in today's conversation, we're going to talk about getting you, the advisor, in front of qualified prospects. In this competitive advisory landscape, consistent growth isn't just about products, it is about better conversations with the right prospects, and that's where strategic appointment setting comes in. And today we have the pleasure of Evan Brown. He's head of strategic partnerships at Apex Acquisition. That's a firm helping financial advisors fill their calendars with qualified pre-screened prospects, which is what all advisors, Evan, really want. I'm going to ask you at the beginning, talk about where you think advisors struggle with finding qualified prospects. And I'm sure if you're watching and listening to this podcast, everybody, you've probably run into Apex's marketing in social media and a variety of other channels. But talk about what you see, Evan, with advisors, where they seem to struggle most.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, I appreciate you having me on. It's
Sure.
a pleasure to be able to talk with you and, more importantly, speak with the advisors out there listening now and even potentially the recording in the future. That being said, from what I hear, I speak to anywhere in the ballpark of 5 advisors a day, give or take, usually RIAs between that 50 to 500 million mark that are looking to grow quicker. The most common thing, bar none, is either relying on referrals or they're only doing seminars for client acquisition. And while that works and it's not bad, you could very quickly run into, I don't want to say a glass ceiling, but it's very common to say, hey, I don't want to ask my clients for more referrals. I don't want to be that salesy guy. I'm sure a lot of you advisors, you might feel that way. Like, how do I get more, right? So it's super common for me to speak with advisors that maybe they have a really good practice. They bring in 10, 20 million a year of new AUM or production, but how do you do more without being salesy with referrals? That's why a lot of people will come to us or even potentially choose seminars.
And that is a time commitment too. Obviously, there's so many seminars that you can possibly do, in an average year. And I talk to advisors all the time. I think we have a lot of the same conversations. Evan, as the vice president of client acquisition, we're doing seminars. We manage 40 radio shows around the country. We do work with certain lead partners. I'm particularly fond of appointment setting as opposed to lead chasing. But one of the things is that in every instance, no matter what you're doing, whether it's doing a seminar, whether it's referrals, whether it's doing a radio show or something else, the goal is to get an appointment, right? And so there's some upfront work that has to be done. In this case, with your company, these appointments qualified show up on your calendar, and it kind of gives the advisor and the firm a lot more time. Not that you want to necessarily stop what you're doing when it's successful. Somebody who presents, somebody who does a radio show, that's also a good branding tactic. But this is if it's not the only thing you're doing, it's a great companion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We would say, we work with multi-billion-dollar firms, and the firms that we work with that grow the quickest, obviously they use us, which is an amazing source, but they don't only use us. They might have radio, they might have seminars. And the thing is, you have the ability with us to tap into likely a different market than you would with the seminars or with the referrals, because even you mentioned it, all of the appointments we bring to our clients, the pre-retirees with $1 million, $2 million, $5 million bucks, they're all actively looking for an advisor, probably not from your local town. So there's a lot more opportunity to be able to take advantage of when you have multiple lead sources and multiple ways to acquire new clients. And even you mentioned it too, the advisor doesn't have to go out and do the dog and pony show and do the steak dinner. While that's great, we're able to kind of cut to the meat and potatoes of the qualified meeting where they're just speaking with the prospect that already wants help.
And having been talking to advisors in this way for a long, long time, the common complaints that they have about lead companies or appointment setting companies is, number one, the lead flow or the appointment flow and the quality. And then, no shows, because a lot of times they are paying up front for appointments, and then sometimes people don't show up, and that does impact their pocketbook. But you guys seem to have solved a lot of those problems. First of all, the lead flow or the appointment flow and the quality. How are you able to do that when many other companies don't seem to have figured that out?
Yeah, well, you can't give away our secret sauce, right?
Come on, Evan.
No, it's the truth is, like, the secret sauce is a couple factors. One is we're very fortunate. We've been able to spend over $25 million on advertising the past 5 years. And when you spend that much money, you kind of figure, something out. And then the second piece to that is there's always going to be no-shows. Even we don't have a 100% show-up rate. However, the way we've been able to mitigate both no-shows and then disqualifications, people that are not ideal fits, is the process and the expectations that a pre-retiree has to go through in order to speak with an advisor. So as an example, if an advisor uses our services, in order for us to connect them with a pre-retiree and book a meeting, it takes that person 30, even up to 45 minutes just to have the opportunity to speak with that advisor. So it's a very time-intensive, more friction-heavy process, which is how we know that pre-retiree is serious about the problem they want solved from that advisor.
Okay. And then talk about, I guess, the process here. What kinds of other support, besides setting the appointment for the advisor, advisors, if they're working with seminars or radio, or they're working with even potentially other lead programs, what the client expects can be completely different in all those scenarios. What kind of support, or should I say training, is available to advisors who jump into something like this and really start from the beginning?
Great question. So this is not something, at least from Apex, where you get a meeting and say, good luck, right, go figure it out. At the end of the day, the way that every advisor knows you can get a lead or even a qualified meeting, it comes down to the ROI and how much you're converting. So not only do we make sure the person's serious and actually get that pre-retiree warmed up to the advisor, we actually train the advisor on how to close at the highest rate. Because if the advisor is not closing business, then obviously there's not getting an ROI. So we help a lot on that end, where all of our coaches that we assign to each individual advisor are trained in the sales and financial services space to ensure that every advisor can actually be trained on the right sales process to convert consistently at 25, 30% for the online meetings that we actually bring them. We have an entire training program and community of our 600 plus advisors that they get to use to their advantage. So there's a lot of support and resources.
Yeah, and I think we can make a comparison here, I guess, to another lead program. I think everybody's familiar with Smart Asset, for example, and that is typically a lead, obviously, and that's also a lead that's shared with other people. They're pretty open in telling you that your conversion rate's going to be 3 to 5%. Now, there is a cost difference there, but that requires a lot of churning. You're talking about a conversion rate of 25 to 30% if everything is going correctly, right? If they take advantage of the training and they're actually good at what they do. That's really an unusually high conversion rate. So let's talk about what it takes for an advisor or a firm to get involved. What's typically the upfront cost and then the ongoing cost as these appointments show up on the calendar?
Yeah, it's a great question. And compared to the Smart Asset, right, it definitely is a different program. It's you're going to convert at a higher rate, but obviously it's more expensive. Now, that's also because the leads aren't shared. So it depends on a couple factors. Each client that we work with, it's going to vary a little bit, but a good ballpark to work with us would be around that $6,000 a month mark. We typically engage anywhere within a 4 to 5 month engagement to start. And then we obviously move from there as the client continues to grow, as the client continues to bring on more clients. We want to be able to, we call it date before we marry, start off with a 4 or 5 month engagement around that ballpark. And then once they're close, we'll obviously commit to longer from there at the advisor's choice.
And then let's talk about the onboarding process too, because another complaint that I see oftentimes that it takes so long for appointments or leads to start to show up on the advisor's calendar. How quickly can somebody start to have conversations?
It's about 14 days. So as an example, today is almost May 1st. If someone was like, hey, Evan, I want qualified meetings on my calendar, I'd say, yeah, you're going to get qualified meetings right around that May 15th ballpark. So you really choose the date as the advisor when you work with us. It's not up to chance. You'll tell me, hey, Evan, start putting appointments on this date, and that's when you start seeing meetings on the calendar.
I think going forward as artificial intelligence is now becoming, the common term for a lot of, lead generation, marketing, things like that. I mean, in your view, how is this landscape going to evolve over the next few years? Because you obviously have access to more tools and understanding, at least at first, how to identify an audience even better. I mean, we know more about them these days than they know about themselves. Still, the struggle is, though, how do you connect with them? How do you get them to take the next step, which is wanting to have that conversation? And that's always, I think, going to be the challenge. But how do you see your company evolving over time?
Yeah. So we actually have an entire tech or what we call AI department in our company already, where the entire purpose is a couple things. One is to both book more appointments for our clients. So we have, for example, AI responders or SMS agents that will go out and actively reactivate old leads or clients that, maybe wasn't the right time. They'll go and rebook appointments for our own advisors. So that's number one. And then number two is, even to your point, we can target on the front end pilots that have golden retrievers if we really wanted to. They really do know more about us than even we might know about us, right, on the advertising perspective. And that is what our entire AI department is for, is to make sure that not only are we keeping up with it, but we're using all of the right softwares, all of the right LLMs and tools to be able to not only book more meetings, but make sure those meetings are actually qualified for our advisors, because you hit the nail on the head. At the end of the day, that's what matters, right? How qualified are the people? How serious are the pre-retirees? And the more as we go into the next upcoming 5 years, not only is AI already moving so quick, our entire department is there to not only keep up with it, but make sure that we can have, for example, AI. That's a part of the training process I didn't mention. A lot of our advisors, we have something that's been rolled out in the past month where an AI call review will go through an advisor's call and actually grade it on a scale from D to A and say, hey, this is where you can improve, or this is how we get better. So we're integrating AI in everything that we do, especially for the client end.
Why don't you just close business too? That would make things a lot easier. I'm going to ask a little bit about you. You're pretty young. I mean, at least you appear to be young to me. Give me your background. How did you end up here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I often speak, or almost only speak, with people that are older than me, which I can appreciate. But it's an interesting story. So I actually used to work at an RIA myself when I was younger. I had my neighbor actually outside of Detroit, Michigan, take me on as the marketing guy. I worked there for about 2 years. He runs a boutique firm, and that's what kind of how I got my start in the industry. So I learned pretty much A to Z. I was brand new, learned A to Z, how the business works, how to get clients, everything. I even helped run seminars back in the day, even golf outings, things of that nature. And that was kind of my first step in. And then he got to a point where he doesn't even really need more clients. He pretty much just relies on referrals. And so it was kind of a mutual split. Beyond that point, I actually started my own marketing company for about 2 years. I ran that, learned a ton about the online advertising space, AI, how do you actually acquire clients? And then I was actually reached out to by a mutual friend to actually join Apex just over 2 years ago. So I've been with Apex the past 2 years, and now, like I mentioned even before, I do a lot of our public speaking, right, events, conferences across the country. I have one coming up in Orlando. I do a lot of the bigger corporate relationships that we have with larger BDs across the country. So I've been very grateful to be a part of Apex, simply not just because of the results that we give for clients, but to the opportunity that it gives me to be able to not only learn about the industry, but build relationships with firms like yourself here at Quantum.
Evan, you're very well-spoken, very articulate for your age, and you've got a lot of experience to support that. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And so, one of the things that we do here frequently is to make sure that, our clients, our advisors are aware of what's out there and then how things are evolving over time, because the landscape has changed. When I started working with advisors probably 11 years ago, things were a lot different. But now things are moving very, very quickly, and it's good to see that you guys are evolving. But again, the reason we're talking to Evan today, everybody, is the fact is that with our clients, we're a marketing firm as well as a product distribution company, and in one sense, a design company. Where a lot of advisors seem to struggle is on that marketing side, and that's really not your gig. Here at Quantum, we're a full-service advertising agency. And the other half of what we do on the creative side is to make sure that you're getting in front of qualified prospects, because that's how we grow, that's how we all grow, and that's how we all make money and do business and scale. Evan Brown, he is the head of strategic partnerships at Apex Acquisition. Evan, thank you so much, and we're going to stay in touch.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.